So one of the things that this conference has always been about is we teach you about history, we teach you about the education of what it means to be in tune with Black history and how that can help you with your work. And a lot of these panels talk about the historical significance of what's been happening in the country due to being a Black person or a Black or brown person in America. But one of the things that we always do for our last few panels is we make it forward thinking and innovative. And that's what this panel is about. So I would like to introduce our moderator for this session. The moderator of our final panel is Dottie Morris. Morris is the Associate Vice President for Institutional Diversity and Equity at Keene State College and co-chair of Keene's Racial Justice Committee, dedicated to addressing racism in the city. She serves on the Governor's Advisory Council on Diversity and Inclusion, as well as his statewide COVID-19 equity response. You have a lot of jobs. We'll leave that later. So without further ado, Dottie Morris.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the final panel of the Great Revival. I feel like I'm at a church revival meeting up in here. And so I'm really happy to be here, and I'm honored to work with such wonderful people on this last panel. And like I said, of this great revival, once a year revival meeting. This is the plan, okay? I won't do any opening words. I had some words I've written, but what I want us to do is go ahead and launch into the process. So two of our speakers, okay, will come up and do about 10, 12 minutes. And then our last speaker, I will ask him questions and he will respond to those questions for we'll do about 10, 12 minutes. And then we'll open it up to the entire audience for questions. Does that work? Feel good about that? Y'all still awake? You didn't eat any more cookies, did you? Okay, all righty, so we'll start. And what I decided to do is the bios of the speakers listed in your program. And I prefer to have them introduce themselves and tell you some other things that they might want to know, you to know about them, okay? So let's kick it off here.
All right. Vertically challenged, so work with me. So who said we needed gracious space? So I know I'm just following Theo, and I know everybody's energy is high, and I need to keep it up there because I need you to listen with your third ear. That's that creative ear. That's that voice that says, things are impossible. This can't happen. I can't do this. That's the ear I want you to listen through as I talk to you about the future. What we've learned the last couple of days, and it's been amazing, is the history. So what I want to be able to do, I'm a doer. I want to be able to share with you something that we can tangibly take out today and actually do as individuals and as a group, as a collective family. But before I do that, I first want to thank Jerry Ann for this opportunity, and thank you, Dottie, for the introduction. I've been talking to Jerry Ann about these concepts for 8 years now? And so I want to be able to share these ideas with you. But before I get started, I need to say these are my ideas and not those of Edward Jones. So I'm Andrea Williamson. I work for Edward Jones. My branch is located in Kennebunk, Maine. And I spend half of my life working with families and individuals about some of the concepts and ideas that I'm going to share with you today. And if we listen with that third ear, my hope is that when we're done, that you will say, that's something I can do. Or at least I know someone I can help do that. So without further ado, let me get started. Putting a little help on here. I want to share with you that where we are currently and what we've done so far has got us to this collective point where we are right now. And everybody in the room who's African American, you need to be able to say, well done. We have knocked down walls. We have picked ourselves up consistently when we continue to surprise and delight. And because of that, this next step is not going to be any more difficult. But to significantly change the wealth gap over the next 100 years, we will need next level thinking. We will need big ideas that will allow us to make bold moves. We will need to change the way we view our own progress. We will need to shock the system. We must imagine the impossible. We cannot continue to play this game with the cards we've been dealt. We must change the game. I want to share with you our opportunity. I want you to be able to listen to the 3 strategic mindsets that I believe if we can embrace those as individuals and a family, we will be able to do just that, change the game. There we go. My slides aren't here. I'll keep going, but
Everybody still awake?
hang in there with me. We did test this earlier, so they're here. I just don't know where. There they go. All right. All right. So this is slide number 2, please. There we go. Nope. Here we go. Let's back up. The primary takeaways on this very busy slide, according to Pew Research, nearly half of Black American households in 2019 earned $50,000 or more. Collectively, our spending power reached in 2019 $1.6 trillion with a T, trillion dollars. Our combined spending has increased 5% annually over the past 2 decades. We are a spending force. We have substantial power and influence. We now need to think about what resources, goods and services, we can create to support this spending force. We need to now think about what to ask current businesses to better tailor to our needs and preferences. We need to think about how can we continue to drive collectively towards self-reliance. So let's talk about the $300 billion opportunity. Next slide, please. Here we go. According to McKinsey & Company, the emerging Black consumer is younger, more plugged in to smartphones, and more brand aware than any other group. The median age of Black America is 34, 10 years younger than the median age of white America. Black consumers are highly digital. We are more likely to own a smartphone, and we're 12% more likely to use it than white Americans. We expect the brands that we buy, the things that we purchase, the companies that we support to align with our values. We expect them to be part of social causes. This is our opportunity, and it's an expanding ready market for entrepreneurs, inventors, and businesses. So I hope your creative juices are thinking, no one needs to come in and support this opportunity. This is our opportunity. So I want to talk to you about You Inc. Next slide, please. I like to think of every person as their own You Inc. My first business was Andrea Incorporated. How we think collectively about this opportunity and how we view the next 100 years as individuals will determine what we do next. We each will have a role to play, and there are things we can do now as individuals and families. For simplicity, I will focus on 3 strategic mindsets: ownership, net worth, and legacy. Next slide, please. We're very, very close. 50-50 split almost between owners and renters in the Black community. Keep in mind, renters must qualify by demonstrating their ability to pay rent. So they have jobs. They also have good credit. They have a down payment dilemma. Currently, much of the nation's rental apartment stock is geographically concentrated in ways that reinforce pockets of poverty and patterns of segregation. So we need a definitive process and programs that identify, one, developers who are willing to build affordable housing of $150,000 or less. We need app creation, app creators that will create applications that will solve for the down payment dilemma. We need bankers willing to create processes, a 5-year down payment program, whereupon successful completion, we are guaranteed to be pre-qualified for a mortgage. We need to create a constant cycle of renters moving into their first home, which, as you know, is the first step to building net worth. Next slide, please. As mentioned yesterday, we talked a little bit about the current net worth situation. So while Americans have $121,760 in net worth, Black America has $24,100 in net worth. If you have a college degree, it's a little bit better, 308.8 for Americans and about 68.9 for Black Americans. And we heard over the last day and a half why that is. So understand, a good credit score, important to know, but just as equally important is your net worth value. So I like to think of net worth as our personal U Inc. profit. Next slide, please. So marketers have spent billions focused on how we buy. Richard Rothstein yesterday said, the way to do big things is to start with little things. So what if we were to think differently about our kids coming out of college? And what if at 27 years old, we talked to them and we developed a process where their U Inc. is, and we told them that their U Inc. is worth at least $2 million in future revenue. If the average Black American is making $50,000 times their 40 years working, their future revenue from day one is worth $2 million. What if we talk to them about talk to them in the beginning about the end? And we talked to them about taking about 5 or 10% of their profit, $5,000, and investing that over their 40 working years. And then what if we taught them how to get an 8% return on that money? That means at the age of 67, every college graduate coming out at 27 that followed this process would have $1.3 million. And then what if we told them that at 67, they got choices? They can evolve, transition, retire, whatever it is you call it. At 67, they'd be able to take that same money and have about $115,000 a year over the next 30 years. What if that was a process in the Black community that as we come out of these great institutions, we've got a plan? I push back when bankers and financial institutions tell me that we need financial literacy. And I'll tell you why. We know how to make money and we know how to distribute it. What we need is information and a process and resources. Next slide, please. We also need to understand we need a little help. So we need some coaches. All of us need coaches and advisors. I'm an advisor with Edward Jones and I have my own advisor. So we all need coaches. They help us actually stay on track. So we've got to figure out how to get more people that look like me in this industry. And I'll tell you why. In the state of Maine, it is only me. So I am the only female Black financial advisor in the state of Maine. That should tell you everything you need to know about what we need in order for African Americans to see themselves and be willing to do and trust advisors. We also need to include on our team, which you'll see I've added a medical coach, because we also need to understand longevity strategies. Because it's one thing to hustle and make all this money. It's another thing to keep this money, but it's another thing to be healthy, to enjoy the money that we're keeping. Next slide, please. So I want to share with you a concept And I do this almost every day. But I want to share it with us as a collective group. We must think beyond our immediate families to change the wealth game. According to Brookings, inheritances account for roughly 4% of annual household income. Much of that goes untaxed or is taxed at a lower rate than the earned income that we get up and get every day. Inheritances and other intergenerational transfers account for more of the racial wealth gap than any other demographic and social economic indicator. I have to say that to you again. Inheritances and other generational transfers account for more of the racial wealth gap than any other demographic and social economic indicator. This is the problem they identified yesterday and most of today. This is what was taken away. This is the loss we've experienced. So in order to get back on track or to move forward, we have to shock the system. So imagine with me, it's 2013, and half of all the Black families in America, 8 million households, took $50,000 either in cash or life insurance and put it in a trust and didn't touch it for 3 generations. When their great-grandchildren became of age, each family at that generational point would have $110 million in trust money and inheritances. We will have created a generation of trust babies and dynastic families. This would allow that generation the opportunity to take on greater risks in terms of career choices and portfolio choices. It would allow them to participate larger in entrepreneurial and inventor endeavors. It would allow them to create more family businesses with a safety net for setbacks, because wealth is an implicit insurance. Next slide, please. So if you're still imagining with me, and it's now 21, 23, 100 years from now, if half those families did what I'm asking us to consider, at that point, each family would have $110 million of wealth. We can now participate in larger numbers in intergenerational wealth transfers. So understand, in 1995 to 2016, white families transferred $350 billion. It was 26% of wealth accumulation in this country. So if we do the $50,000 and now it's 21, 23, and each family's got $110 million, and we're looking at that great-grandchildren generation, what we would have done collectively, our great-grandchildren would control upwards of $880 trillion worth of wealth. We will have changed the game. We will have launched a generation, and we will have our neck and our hands around this wealth gap. How big is your bowl? Thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. I want to personally thank you for your graciousness. I want to personally thank Miss Jerry-Ann Bogus and Gina Bolker and Mr. Dan Comley and Yulia Rothenberg for you all for putting together this wonderful event. And I'm just excited and thankful to be here with you all today. So just a brief background on me. So I'm actually an adjunct here at Southern New Hampshire University teaching online. And so this was, I've been an adjunct since 2016. And this was the first time that I had heard of this conference. And I said, you know, I need to come out and see the campus and experience the culture here. And in my bio, it says that I am provost of the University of Fort Lauderdale. I'm formerly provost of the University of Fort Lauderdale in academic retention and academic affairs. So I have a little bit over 15 years experience working in higher education. I teach business courses, and I am looking to create change like the rest of you. So my background is relatively uninteresting. I come from a hardworking middle-class family whose parents and grandparents believed in the power of education, whose great-grandparents had land passed down generations to only have family members fighting over the assets, mismanage the assets, or lose them altogether, to have family members make statements about not wanting grandma's house because they didn't want to live in an all-white neighborhood. This is incredibly frustrating to me. My family lacked the competence to pass down the generational wealth. So when I decided to enroll in a doctoral program, I wanted my research to be meaningful to my community and my family. Why weren't we ready for the wealth? Are we ready now? As business markets shift and change rapidly, we are faced with new challenges, competing in a global society. I wanted to understand the lived experiences of Black business owners and their global competence in e-business. So I see my slides there. Okay. So what we need to know, and we've talked a lot about the history these last couple of days, but again, what we need to know are the number of both employer and non-employer firms by owner, according to the US Census Bureau. So you see it's categorized by owner type, and the number of non-employer and employer firms significantly lower for Black Americans in comparison to their white counterparts, in comparison to looking at the billions of total sales that also attributes to. We need to know the household net worth and income by race and ethnicity and the overall wealth disparity based on the Gini coefficient, which is a statistical measure of the wealth gap. We need to know how we got here. So we've talked about the history, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but I do wanna make emphasis about in 1890, Congressman Walter R. Vaughan introduces the ex-slave pension bill and argues that reparations are equally beneficial to Blacks and whites because the system would provide economic justice to former slaves and their spending would help boost the Southern economy. By this time, Blacks held less than 1% of the wealth. By 1915, Johnson versus McAdoo was the first documented federal litigation for reparations for slavery. They argued that $68 million had been taken as a cotton tax was owed to people who produced the cotton. The Supreme Court held that the US was safeguarded against such suits. By this time, white ownership was 46%, while Black ownership was at 22%. We know, again, through our conversations these past 2 days, how much redlining impacted home ownership rates. And by 1989, Representative John Conyers introduced H.R. 40 and stated that slavery is a blemish on this nation's history. And until it is addressed, our country's story will remain marked as he introduces the bill to establish a commission to study reparations. I'm grateful to Nicole Sublette for sharing your story earlier this morning about your father and his experience with the GI Bill, because not many of us are aware of the impacts that the GI Bill has had on generational wealth for Blacks. There was no greater instrument for widening an already huge racial gap in post-war America than the GI Bill. The GI Bill was passed, offering college tuition, low-cost home loans, and unemployment insurance to veterans, but implementation made the benefits inaccessible for most Black veterans. By 2014, Ta-Nehisi Coates published The Case for Reparations in The Atlantic, bringing a new wave of mainstream attention to the compounding effects of racist policies. I focused on the reparations. There goes my stylus. I focused on the reparations, historical piece of reparations. Thank you. Because we know it's taken hundreds of years for us to get to where we are today. And it is going to take hundreds of years for us to close that gap. But Black Americans are resilient. I want to repeat and emphasize that Black Americans are resilient. And it's important to recognize that without the hard work and without using our disadvantage toward our advantage, it's very difficult to continue to narrow that gap. So we know the challenges ahead as business is changing for Black Americans. We know the nature of business operations have changed from the emergence of e-commerce, even more so after the pandemic. This also means the nature of competition changes since global companies are feeling the pressure to stay relevant in the global market. We know that e-commerce sales, shipments, and revenues generate trillions of dollars among various industries, broken down here. With these new trends in business, what opportunities, if any, are there for Black business owners to start and grow their businesses? I wanted to know, do Black business owners have the global competence to compete in the e-business industry? And to define global competence, it's the capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance, and includes the dimensions of having knowledge, which is understanding historic, geographic, economic, political, and social variables related to international culture, having the skills, having a diverse range of abilities and attitudes, having a positive disposition concerning cultural differences. This model of global competency has 8 dimensions, both internal and external. Having self-awareness, knowing your own personal behaviors and how it impacts your decision-making. Are you a risk taker? Are you open-minded to new ideas and developments? And attentiveness to diversity. And we've talked about that in regard to diversity and inclusion, being attentive and intentional about diversity. External readiness, having the global awareness, which is the historical perspective, intercultural capability, and the ability to collaborate across cultures. I also wanted to know how the use of e-business models impacts Black-owned businesses. I may not be able to play this audio, but I'm gonna try. If I can't, then I'll just move on. I don't know if okay, so if you could go to 1707 or 17, at minute 17. Can you up the volume a little bit?
Contrary to what some people might believe, our products do not specifically target just people of African descent. We have a whole line that works especially well with people who are racial, Jewish, who have Asian, and perhaps as well with more finer texture. And so that said, I Europe-based looking at it, and so the world is not here. So knowing what's going on around the world is so important because if we plan to move into countries with different regions within the United States, there's different cultures within all those regions, and different people do different things prepared depending on the climate. For instance, in Michigan, we would do something completely different in the wintertime to go to Florida. It's not cold there, you know. And so, the South is having committed, so we gotta make sure that we are marketing and creating products. When we create products and marketing them effectively so that people in the South or on the West Coast, they know they can use, let's say, step 3 in our life, this is the last time once my fighter to alleviate the humidity, the effects of humidity. Whereas in the winter time here in Michigan, we need to be marketing our moisturizer. You know, that's the thing. At South Africa, for example, they had actually picked out a call earlier today with a retailer in South Africa. Their culture of what they expect their brand to look like, the brand that they kind of gravitate towards, is completely different than the brand, the look that we here in the United States tend to gravitate towards. It can be the exact same product, bottle, but it's the packaging of it has to be different. We need to give it a chance and purchase it. So social media,
Okay, go ahead and stop the video for me, please. Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, thank you. So that individual was one of my participants in the study. She was is an e-business owner, and some of the challenges that e-business owners are facing have a lot to do with understanding what is going on globally and how it impacts them. So to wrap up, I do want to just quickly talk about what is it that we need to be working on as e-business owners, e-business entrepreneurs in the Black community. One is there is a show that there's the attitude competence is there. There is a positive disposition that e-business owners have, that Black e-business owners have. The area of opportunity for improvement is in the competence of knowledge and skills. The use of e-business models impacts Black-owned businesses in a positive way. And there are various positive emergent themes here illustrated, primarily an increase in economic opportunity. So when we answer the question where the money resides in business, I would say it's e-commerce. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. So I think we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to pretty much just have a conversation. And if anyone has any questions, you just raise your hand and Dottie will call on you as well. My name is Wheeler Del Toro. I am a business consultant, and I also work as a nutritional anthropologist. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start off by asking one question of you, and it might spark some other questions. So you started your first business in second grade.
Yes,
Second grade.
second grade.
You were about what, 8, 7? Wow. So it seems like it runs in your body. It's in your blood.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So the reason I started a business, of course, I was 7, 8,
Right.
was because there was this girl. It's a love story, though.
Oh yeah.
It's a
Okay, I
bit-
shouldn't laugh. I should.
No. And I wanted to take her out to lunch,
Oh.
and I didn't have any money,
Uh,
and my parents wouldn't give me any money. And I seen the Girl Scouts making a lot of money in school. And I was extremely jealous. So I decided that I'm going to sell my own cookies, which didn't go anywhere.
oh.
But I started selling candy. And at my peak, I think I made like $60 in one day.
Ooh, that's
That's a lot of money.
You
Yeah.
hustling, brother.
Yeah. But
Oh,
there were consequences to that because
oh.
I'm an immigrant. I'm from Jamaica. And you had a lot of kids who went to my school who were looking for Wheeler, and they were very animated because of the sugar. So
Mm.
people thought that I was selling other, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you ever take her to lunch? I want to know.
Actually, I did.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, another question. Unless other people have questions. Okay. I want Willer all to myself.
Yeah.
You have created a number of multi-million-dollar businesses, including the first doggy daycare in Boston and the first vegan ice cream scoop shop in the country. What was it like to be a Black business owner in Boston in the 2000s, and how did you work around the obstacles you faced?
The doggy daycare was a little bit more complex than the vegan ice cream parlor. Most of us we all look over 21, are used to having their dogs play in the backyard. So it's very difficult for me to convince investors that we were going to open up this amazing dog place where people dropped off their dogs
Mhm.
and had a curriculum for the day. So people were like, yes, it was very difficult. That was actually more difficult than being a Black entrepreneur.
Mm.
The only places that would allow me to open a warehouse for the dogs was basically in Roxbury. I don't know if people are familiar with Roxbury, but I realized that there are more obstacles than just structural racism. A lot of people in the neighborhood were concerned that I was bringing white people's dogs into the neighborhood to ruin their neighborhood. And what I was trying to do was create jobs in the neighborhood. So sometimes we all have to have different conversations so that we understand what everyone's doing.
Right.
Now with the vegan shop, that was also difficult because most people were like, how are we going to make ice cream without cream?
Right.
And that confused a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was also the first person who also did gluten-free. And most people had no idea what gluten-free or vegan was.
Right.
So it was difficult. It was more of a convincing people
Mhm.
that the ice cream and the doggy daycare made sense.
Mhm.
And obviously we all know now that gluten-free and vegan and doggy daycares, I hear more doggy daycare commercials
Mhm.
and car companies doing it. I'm like, wow.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you actually had to have a curriculum for the dogs? Or maybe I misheard you.
No, you heard me, Dottie. So I actually opened up a prep school for dogs. It was called Country Day Prep.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Boston.
Absolutely, in Boston. And we had a curriculum. We actually had a facility a little bit bigger than this. We showed movies. We had sing-along time. I know that. Yes.
Yeah.
We had a yearbook.
Yeah.
I know that.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say?
Wait a
So,
second,
yeah,
Dottie,
no,
wait a second.
I
Dottie.
don't mean to joke about
No,
this,
no, no,
but
no.
it seems like there was more investment in the dogs than in some schools.
Yeah, oh,
So
absolutely.
I'm saying that kind of tongue in,
No,
I'm
absolutely.
laughing, but
So we had clients who, I don't know if this is the proper terminology for it, but they froze their dogs' semen to clone their dogs.
okay.
I remember one client in particular whose wife had dropped off their dog, and then the husband had showed up because the wife had actually switched lunches. So the dog actually had a better lunch than the
Wow.
husband did.
Wow.
So you would be surprised at how many people actually love their dogs more than kids. And that was a tough thing for me to get
Right.
used to,
Right.
because I see homeless people, addicted people, abused
Right.
people, and the love that people have for their pets. You know, it's $1 billion industry.
It really is.
You know,
And it's not that you don't like animals, but you just think that.
No, I
humans-
love
Yeah,
animals.
yeah.
and wait, Dottie, let me add this last
Oh,
thing.
please, please.
The curriculum, and don't forget,
Don't forget.
there's lunch. So I created a special lunch program that was so well received that we got calls from the Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons to create a dog menu for them as well. So
Yeah. All right.
Dottie,
Did somebody say Dottie? I thought I was hearing voices.
so did I.
Okay, yes.
I have a question, Wheeler.
Sure.
What you were doing in those days, we would consider in a technology saying disruptive,
Yes.
because you're doing something that just was not done. So I was wondering if you could give advice from an entrepreneur's perspective to folks who are thinking about ideas that aren't out there, about how they might approach or think about that idea as new budding entrepreneurs.
Thank you for the question. So I'm old enough to have been out in the West Coast, San Francisco, in the mid to early 90s. So I met a lot of people who were doing tech stuff. A friend of mine who went out to work for a tech company, I had no idea what a tech company was in the mid to early 90s. So what I've learned from the people who went out there is the crazier the idea, the better it is. The more innovative it is, the better it is, because you'll spend less on marketing. I also invented because of the menu,
Okay.
a doggy ice cream line called Frostbite. We had three dog ice cream trucks.
Ice cream
Truck,
trucks.
right? So
With
we
the
went-
little music that
Oh,
plays.
yes,
And goes.
32 songs, Dottie.
Oh, 30. Wow.
32 songs.
Wow.
And we literally put those out in the street, one in Philadelphia, one in New York, and one in Boston. And in less than a week, we were on Good Morning America.
Wow.
So we didn't have to do any marketing for it.
Right.
And from there, we were on NPR. It felt like every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any other questions that people might have?
I-
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay, I have a
Melina
question.
has the mic.
Yeah, so before you move on to your next business, can you
Yes.
tell us how long whether the doggy daycare business is still in existence, and a little bit of the history of that business we'd like to hear about that.
Yeah. So the doggy daycare business, like what I do with all my businesses, I flip businesses. So once I seen it's when the mailman's telling you should open a doggy daycare, it's time to get out. No offense to any mail people. So it was the business now is oversaturated. And in Boston is a good example. You would probably need $2 or $3 million to start. I started with like $5,000 and a bunch of fraternity brothers from Phi Beta Sigma. Woo, shout out to you. Yeah. Who helped me organize the space. A friend of mine is also in dogs. When we started, I literally had to borrow dogs from a dog trainer when the news crews showed up, because we just didn't have any dogs. So, you have to be creative. And when it's time to get out, it's time to get out. So one of the things I'm going to be very honest with my panelist, Andrea, everything I've done, I've always been afraid to talk to people like her. And now that I'm older, I realize what a catastrophic mistake that's been, because I always thought short term, sell short term. And I think a lot of Black people, all we do is think short term. So, and that's been my biggest mistake with any business I've ever started. So everybody, please talk to her.
Okay,
oh,
let's open it up. Wait, there's a question, one question over here, and then we'll open it up for the questions to the entire panel. How does that feel? Everybody's still okay? Yeah, thank you. Just like to check in.
Thank you. I'm Sandy, and I don't know if you remember me or not, but one of your businesses that you did was your pop-up restaurant at
Oh, yeah.
Seacoast African American Cultural Center.
Hi, Sandy.
Are you still doing that?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So if people don't know, I also host pop-up restaurants. So what I'll do, I think what we're doing now is we're doing soul food, and it's a combination of soul food, meaning Southern soul food, but also Korean food. So like we do a fusion of the both, right? So ramen with short ribs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm down. I would be.
With cornbread on top.
Ooh. Yeah.
Okay. Is that the last question?
Any other questions for the staff? I
Over
know
here.
we're running short on time, but yes, please.
Hey, real quick, I am an unemployed summer camp professional, underemployed DEIB facilitator and consultant, and I dream of opening my own summer camp someday,
Yes.
hopefully in the very near future.
Yes.
I bring all this up because I believe, Andrea, one of the last things you said was to be bold. And I'm sitting here thinking after 2 days of this conference, how can I just be bold with those around me? How can I be bold for those young people right outside these walls? And what can I do right now? And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna give someone 20 bucks. I'm gonna give a person of color 20 bucks. Why? Because I can. And I really can't. Like I said, I'm unemployed, right? But then I started thinking, for the folks that are here, how can we be bold? Do you have an idea that maybe someone in this room like, you know what? I can do that. Even if I'm unemployed, if I'm overemployed, or if I have that generational wealth, what can I do right now? Does any of our panelists have an idea? You know, just to tell us right now, when you leave this conference, this is what you can do. Because I like to go away from conferences with something that I can do. So what would you tell us to do?
Is that a question for me or for the panel?
I think it's for the panel.
For panel?
Yeah, that sounds like a good panel question.
Okay.
So I thank you for your question. I think that some of the things that people can do now, or one of the areas that I mentioned that is lacking is in the area of knowledge and skills. And so to be bold, I believe, is what you kind of talked about, that fear that a lot of entrepreneurs do have, fear of their lack of skills, fear of their lack of knowledge, and fear of their limited understanding of technology, for instance. But to be bold is to step out in front of that fear and check out resources. I'm gonna give one resource that's very affordable, helpful to business owners. It's called the Black Business School. Now, business school, I do not recommend traditional university business schools if you're trying to learn how to start and grow a successful business. And I work in the College of Business. It is a very different, the curriculum is not designed to help educate you on how to be a successful entrepreneur. But the Black Business School is specifically designed to help entrepreneurs. It is very affordable. And I just recommend to be bold is to step out in front of that fear, find a network that you can get information from. That's another area that is lacking, is access to information and networks. Coming to conferences like this, stepping outside of your comfort zone and getting information, and then leaving here, don't just not act on what you've learned. Don't just not act, act. Act on what you've taken from this conference moving forward.
Totally agree. So what I didn't do was share with you, and I can't see your face, so apologize. So prior to coming to Edward Jones and sort of running it together, I've been in the industry about 20 years. But I had an opportunity to spend 9 months with an incubator, an entrepreneur incubator called Techstars. You've probably heard of it in Silicon Valley. And what we did was, what you'll find is there's a whole bunch of folks there who asked the same question you just asked. So I just shared with you, we have a $300 billion opportunity in the Black community. We need to find out what we need. So find out what you're missing. Usually entrepreneurs are creating something because it's out of their frustration. So as an African-American woman, one of the things I need is I need hair products, I need clothes, I need all these things that I need to do to survive, right? As an African-American woman, and I'm looking for experiences. So I say, don't try to be creative in the sense that you've got to do someone else's strength. Find out what frustrates you and what you're good at, and then sit down and think about, are there more people like you? I'm sure there are that are experiencing the same thing. But in our community right now, there are marketers that are taking advantage of this space. It's $300 billion and we're spending 1.6 trillion. We are our own consumer. So what do we need? That would be my suggestion, a starting spot.
Willard, please.
Hello? Yeah. So to actually specifically give you advice, I can't say it. There you go. This is a weird question. Do you know any dating sites? Okay. Good for you. So what I would do as you said, you used to be a camp counselor? Okay. Create a web page and match inner city kids with camps in New England, and take a small percentage from the camp. Low cost startup. I'm here.
Well, that was the last question, and I want to thank our panel today for just sending us off with a lot to think about. I think that the entire conference has been a moment for all of us to learn, to understand. And so what I would like for us to do now is to take a minute and just reflect on everything you heard, everything you've thought about over the last 2 days, and then think of 3 actions you will take. Write those actions down, put it in your phone, that you're planning to take over the next 2 months. So we'll just get really quiet, leave you with your thoughts. And also, I think that the sound of those children is a good backdrop as we think about the future. So I love it that we have that as a backdrop. It reminds us of what we need to do today so those babies could have a wonderful future. So keep letting them make noise. Don't shut them down. I love sounds of babies. So we'll be quiet for just a minute, and then Jerry Ann, I think, will come up and do something. But I'll just set my timer for 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I set them in, and I'll stop talking. Thank you all very much. The last charge is, as we are dispersing, share your plan with at least 2 people in the room. Okay, so thank you very much.
Now, I know we're coming to the end of we're at the end of our program, almost. We invigorated your minds. You've learned a lot. We've looked at history, and we've got some very good, innovative ideas. I think Mr. Del Toro, we need to like mind his mind for these ideas that come up. But we do have a closing program that will invigorate your body. We got you here, and we want to leave you excited and energized. So shortly, a group will come up and you'll get to dance off all that energy that you have. But I also want to just take 1 minute to thank my staff and the program committee, planning committee, for putting this conference together. And if they're in the room, I just want them to stand real quick and just be acknowledged. It's in calling people's name and thanking them that we recognize the work. And it did take a lot to put this together. So Gina Boker, Dan Comley, Retha Weathersby, Janine Jocks, Barbara Ward, Ann Romney, Judy Posner, Terry Robinson, Yulia Rothenberg, Ben Welsh, and Sonia Martino. Thank you all very much for putting this together. Thank you. And I want to thank Snoo and Jada and her staff for doing being a gracious host. Good space, our tech folks, the chefs and the catering staff. We thank you so much. It was wonderful. I'm sure Terry wants to talk because Terry just loves this attention. So I'll bring him back up. You can imagine our office. We've got two male figures in our office, Dan and Terry. Our office, we say prayers every day.
See if my dad heard you said that. Oh Lord. I mean, just to say, like, working in a female-led organization is pretty amazing. And it's like having an auntie working with you all every day. So it's pretty fun. But I do just want to make a quick announcement that we have our silent auction is in the back. This is like our last call for that. So if you see something that you want to bid on it, please go ahead and bid. After this, if your contact info is on there, whoever the highest bidder is, you will get a phone call and we will figure out the arrangements to get you your bidding auction item. Other than that, thank you so much for coming out.